The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence. It was the wine glass, still half full, lipstick smudged on the rim. The second thing I noticed was the door, locked, from the inside. She never locks it when she's home. Ever. And I hadn't heard a thing. No goodbye? No footsteps. No, I'll be back soon. Just the mechanical click of the deadbolt while I was brushing my teeth downstairs, like a magician vanishing in the middle of her own trick. I stood there, holding my toothbrush, foam still in my mouth, staring at that glass like it had something to confess. And then I remembered. I still had the spare key in my gym bag. I hadn't told her I found it. She thought she'd hidden it well, behind the cleaning supplies under the sink, next to the box of dryer sheets I haven't touched since she moved in. But I found it 2 weeks ago when I was digging for aspirin. I didn't mention it. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to believe I'd never need it. That night, I needed it. And when I turned that key, I didn't hear the TV. I didn't hear music. I didn't even hear movement. Just the slow creak of wood as I stepped into the hallway, past the coat rack she never used, toward the glow of the kitchen. Her purse was gone, but her shoes were still there. One heel tipped over sideways, like it had been kicked off too fast. The fridge door was slightly open, casting light onto the floor. And then I heard it. A faint buzz. A voice. No, a man's voice. Low, confident, laughing. Not loud, but close. Too close. I followed it. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from upstairs. It was coming from her phone, lying face down on the coffee table, screen glowing with an active FaceTime call. And there she was, in the middle of the screen, wearing the robe I bought her for our anniversary, twirling her hair, smiling like I hadn't seen in months. I just don't feel like it anymore, she said, her voice soft, but laced with something sharp. I wasn't even sure who she was talking to, until the guy on the screen laughed again and said, "Good. Then stop pretending." I stood in my own living room. Invisible. She had locked me out of my own evening, but left the door wide open for someone else. I didn't say a word, didn't throw anything, didn't cry. I just picked up her wine glass, finished it in one long, bitter gulp, and walked out before she even knew I was there. But the next morning, she changed, completely, and not for the reason you'd think. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen, humming. I swear, the same woman who had just the night before told some faceless voice, "I just don't feel like it anymore," was now standing barefoot in front of the stove, flipping pancakes like it was a Sunday morning in some loving suburban marriage. She even looked over her shoulder at me like I was the one who'd overslept, like I was the one who had something to explain. "Morning," she said, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "You were out late?" I just stared at her. Not angry, not shocked. Numb. Out late. I had been home. She just hadn't noticed. I slept in the car for 3 hours. I didn't want to come back inside after what I'd seen, not because I was scared of her, but because I was scared of how easily she could lie to me. To my face. With her whole body. She handed me a plate. Blueberry pancakes. Just like the day before. Like she was repeating the same line in a script that no longer made sense. "You okay?" she asked, her tone coated in false concern. "You look tense." Tense. I felt like a stranger who'd walked into the wrong version of his own life. I didn't answer. I just took the plate and sat down. The food looked perfect. Blueberries evenly spaced. Syrup already poured. I should have felt loved. But all I tasted was vinegar. She sat across from me and scrolled her phone. Again, smiling every now and then like someone was texting her jokes. Probably him. And you know what's funny? I wanted to say something. I really did. I wanted to grab her phone, slam it on the table, and say, "Who the hell was that guy?" But instead, I asked, "How's work been lately?" Yeah, that's what I said. Like a scared little intern trying not to offend the CEO. I don't know what was wrong with me. I was trying to pretend my way through it. Like if I just acted normal, maybe the truth would go away. She didn't even blink. "Busy, but I'm making progress." Liar. I'd looked at her emails. Her calendar was empty. No campaign launches. No deadlines. The company she worked for hadn't even updated their website in 2 months. Busy with what, exactly? I knew I couldn't keep sitting on it. I needed proof. Actual proof. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. I've learned she always goes into deep sleep around 2 a.m. because of the melatonin gummies she takes. She has this habit of tucking the bottle in her nightstand drawer like it's some state secret. I slid her phone out from under her pillow. It was locked, obviously. But guess what? I had watched her type in her passcode more times than I can count, for digits. Her childhood house number. She's sentimental that way. I unlocked it. And I swear to you, I wish I hadn't. There were photos, screenshots, conversations with a man saved under the name Lara. Smooth. I opened one message thread, and the first thing I read was, "He doesn't suspect anything. You were right. Guilt makes him so obedient." My stomach twisted, but I kept reading. And I saw it all. Pictures from hotel rooms. Voice memos. Emojis that felt like slaps in the face. She wasn't just slipping away emotionally. She had already left, and I was just her roommate with a bank account. I put the phone back carefully. She didn't stir. I stood over her for a moment, watching her breathe. Calm. Peaceful. Like the betrayal she buried under those sheets wasn't suffocating me one breath at a time. I didn't yell. I didn't shake her awake. I walked into the hallway, shut the guest room door, and I stayed up all night writing a list. A list of everything she'd ever asked of me. And I crossed off every single one. Because starting now, she was on her own. The morning after I read the messages, she asked if I could pick up oat milk. Oat milk. I almost laughed in her face. I'd just read her saying I was obedient, that she had me trained. And the first thing she does after unknowingly exposing herself? She sends me on a grocery errand. I should have said no, but I said sure. Because it hit me. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not really. She'd already convinced herself that I wouldn't leave, that I didn't have it in me, that my silence was weakness. So I played along. I went to the store, bought her precious oat milk, even remembered her vanilla protein bars, smiled when I came back, and dropped the bag on the counter like a good little husband. She kissed me on the cheek. It burned. That afternoon, I took my first step. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind you see in movies where the guy changes the locks or files for divorce right away. No, I made it small, subtle, invisible. I logged into our joint bank account and opened a second one in my name only. Then I changed my direct deposit settings at work. Took 15 minutes. She wouldn't notice until payday. Then I did the same thing with the utilities. Changed the login credentials. Removed her number as a recovery contact. She always hated managing the boring stuff. She never even looked at our bills. Just assumed I'd take care of them. She was right. But now I was taking care of them, without her. That night she asked if I wanted to go to her friend's engagement party the following weekend. This part killed me. She said it like nothing was wrong. Like we were still one of those couples who held hands at weddings and whispered about eloping one day, even though we were already married. Like she hadn't emotionally dismembered me piece by piece in her private little digital playground. I said sure again. Why? Because the more she thought I was fine, the more careless she'd get. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, just staring at myself, not recognizing my own eyes, noticing the slouch in my shoulders, the gray creeping into my hair, the slight dent in my left cheek from how often I slept with my head turned away from her. I looked like a ghost she hadn't even noticed dying. So I shaved, trimmed everything, cleaned up my neckline, put on cologne, not for her, not for anyone else, just to remind myself what it felt like to smell awake. She noticed. The next day, she actually complimented me. Wow, she said over breakfast. You cleaned up nice. Date with someone? I froze. She meant it as a joke. But my stomach dropped, because that's exactly what she'd been doing. Cleaning up, dressing differently, putting effort into looking like a version of herself I hadn't seen since our dating days. And she assumed I was doing the same, without even a flicker of concern. I didn't answer. She sipped her coffee and said, "Relax. I'm kidding." But I wasn't laughing, because in that moment, I realized she didn't fear losing me. She didn't think she could. That night, I sent a message. Just one. Not to a lawyer. Not to a therapist. To someone else. Someone she'd forgotten existed. Someone who used to know her better than I did. Her ex-best friend. The one she cut off after some stupid falling out over a guy years ago. I still had her number saved from an old group trip we took. I never deleted it. Not for any reason. It was just there. So I wrote, "Hey, this is probably out of the blue, but I think you deserve to know what she's been up to. I found something. It's bad. Call me if you care." I hit send. 5 minutes later, typing. And just like that, I started twisting the first thread loose from the sweater she thought would never unravel. The phone call came late, almost 11:30 p.m. I was sitting in the garage with the engine off, lights off, music off. Just me in the dark with the phone screen glowing like a spotlight on my shame. I didn't expect her to respond that fast. I figured maybe she'd block me, or ask who I even was after all these years. But when her name lit up on the screen, Sierra, old group trip, my hand froze. I stared at it until it almost rang out. Then I picked up. Her voice hadn't changed. Same sharp edge. Same subtle tone, like she was constantly 2 seconds away from calling someone out. She didn't say hello. No pleasantries. Just this. I knew it. I freaking knew she was doing something shady. My throat tightened. You did. Sierra exhaled so hard I could hear it rattle through her nose. You have no idea. I've had this feeling for years. She used to tell me you were boring but reliable, like you were a retirement plan instead of a husband. My fingers curled into fists in my lap. She said that. Sierra actually laughed. Not out of humor, more like disbelief. That's not even the worst of it. The reason we stopped talking? It wasn't over a guy. She told you that, didn't she? Said we fell out over some guy I liked, and she dated. That's what she told me, yeah. Wrong, Sierra snapped. She cut me off because I saw her at a hotel with someone who wasn't you. I confronted her, and she told me to mind my own business. She said, and I quote, he can't handle the truth, and I'm not ready to leave the comfort. Comfort? That's what you were to her. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember how long I sat in the car after that. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. But eventually, I came inside, quietly, and looked at her lying there under the duvet like she hadn't spent years rehearsing lies in her sleep. I was done waiting. The next morning, I skipped work. She thought I was in the shower when she left, but I was in the kitchen. I waited until her car turned the corner, then I went upstairs and opened the safe. She never bothered to change the passcode. Her dad's birthday. I guess when you think someone is harmless, you don't hide much. Inside was everything. Her passport, some emergency cash, backup hard drive, and a leather-bound journal she used to write in years ago. She claimed she stopped. She didn't. I didn't even have to go past the first 5 pages to feel like the floor had cracked beneath me. Sometimes I pretend he's someone else. I know it's cruel, but it helps. I don't think I can ever love him the way he needs me to. He's starting to suspect. I need to get better at hiding it. What if I just disappeared? That last line. I read it 4 times. My hand was shaking. Not out of rage. Just the sick weight of realizing how long this had been brewing. How carefully she'd managed the lie. How stupid I'd been. Doing little love notes in her lunch. Driving across town in the snow to fix her tire. Canceling nights out with friends just because she wanted to talk. I put everything back exactly where I found it. Then I opened my laptop and started transferring every shared document, every login she might use, every piece of our digital life, into my hands alone. No drama. No hacking. Just preparation. I wasn't leaving yet, but I was untangling myself. That afternoon, Sierra texted again. I still have the screenshots from back then. If you want them, they're yours. I just replied, send everything. She did. 23 screenshots. Some blurry, some crystal clear. A hotel reservation in Callie's name for 2 guests. A selfie she sent someone in a dress she told me she wore to brunch with coworkers. A message. He's too fragile to leave, but I need more than this. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Too fragile to leave. That's how she saw me. A man too soft to fight back. But what she didn't realize was that I didn't need to fight her. I just needed to let her sink herself. And I already had the match. I didn't say a word to her for 2 days. I didn't slam doors. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't leave dramatic clues that I knew everything. I just let the silence grow between us like black mold, slowly rotting the foundation she thought was still stable. She kept trying to fill it. Want to grab tie tonight? Did you see the new episode of that weird detective show? Are you mad at me or just in a mood? I shrugged at everything, smiled politely. A ghost playing house. She didn't know that while she was texting her coworkers, I had already forwarded all 23 screenshots to a private email account in her name, one she forgot she used for travel confirmations. And then I just waited. It took less than 24 hours. I was in the garage again, tightening a loose screw on the old wooden bench she asked me to fix last year and then never mentioned again. My phone buzzed once. Just once. Callie, one new email, what is this? I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I walked back inside as calmly as if I'd just grabbed the mail. She was standing in the middle of the kitchen barefoot, holding her phone like it had just confessed to a crime. Her eyes were wide, not with guilt, but with fear. What is this? She asked, voice sharp, breath shallow. Who sent this to me? I shrugged. Looks like someone wants to tell you something. Did you do this? I thought you didn't feel like talking. I replied, echoing her old line, and walked past her toward the sink. She followed. You went through my phone? I turned. You went through our marriage. For a second, she didn't say anything. She was calculating. Not remorseful. Not regretful. Just mentally reaching for the version of herself that could talk her way out of anything. But she saw it on my face. I wasn't playing anymore. I wasn't interested in explanations, in begging, in lies dipped in sugar. Her expression cracked. For real. Okay. It wasn't serious. It was emotional. I just needed someone to talk to and... Don't lie again, I cut in. I've read the messages. I've seen the pictures. I've heard the recordings. I know everything. She went pale. Like sheet white. Why didn't you say anything? She whispered. I wanted to see how far you'd go. She sank into a chair and covered her face. I stood there. No comfort. No reaching out. Just silence. Her old tool, now turned against her. And then she said it. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you. And in that moment, I realized something I should have known years ago. She didn't love me. She loved what I did for her. She loved what I covered for her. She loved the safety I built while she played games in secret. I stared down at her, curled in a ball of fake regret and collapsing ego, and I said, You already did. She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but not broken. Still trying to read the room. Still hoping to find an angle. That's when I hit her with the second match. I spoke to Sierra. Boom. Everything in her face changed. That was the name she never expected to hear again. The one name that held every ugly truth she'd buried with years of silence and deflection. She opened her mouth to speak, but I kept going. She told me everything. The hotel, the lies, the friendship you threw away just to protect your secret weekends. And guess what? She still had all the receipts. She looked like she might throw up. She gripped the edges of the table like the world was tilting. You don't get to spin this anymore, I said, voice steady. You don't get to rewrite the timeline. I'm done playing husband to a stranger who talks about me like I'm some charity case. Then I pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table. She didn't open it. She stared at it like it had teeth. What is this? She asked, barely above a whisper. It's not divorce papers, I said. Not yet. She looked up sharply. But it is everything you forgot I'm capable of. Then I walked out. Her voice followed me down the hallway, cracked and desperate. Wait. Please, we can fix this. Don't walk away, please. But I didn't stop. Because now she was the one chasing. Now she was the one losing sleep. Now she was trying to hold on. And that was only the beginning. The day after I slid that envelope across the table, she didn't go to work. She stayed home, walking around in her robe, hair tied up like she was sick, but I knew better. She wasn't sick. She was scared. She was trying to read the silence like it was a new language she'd never learned. I didn't speak to her that morning. I made coffee, took my time showering, put on cologne again, wore the shirt she once called her favorite, before she stopped noticing what I wore altogether. She watched me like a hawk from the kitchen doorway. You're leaving? She asked. I nodded. For work. I didn't respond. And I'll admit it, part of me wanted her to beg. To throw herself at my feet and finally confess everything. Not just the bits she thought were forgivable. But instead, she asked the one question that revealed her deepest fear. Are you going to see Eris? That was it. Not can we talk. Not please don't go. Just that. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. I'm going to find someone who sees me as more than a background character in her drama. And I walked out. But here's the part she didn't know. I wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to see Eris. I wasn't even staying in the same town. I had planned it all. A week earlier, while she was in one of her client dinners, which I now knew were code for whatever cover story she needed, I drove 2 towns over and rented a month-to-month studio apartment under my middle name. Paid cash. No trail. I'd already started moving boxes and slowly, under the excuse of donating stuff. I emptied out my wardrobe little by little. All the important documents were long gone. My laptop, my hard drives, my birth certificate, the marriage license. I left her a home filled with furniture and routines, but nothing real. Nothing that couldn't be replaced. And that day? That day I finished the exit. By lunch, I was gone. No goodbye, no note, no forwarding address. Just gone. That evening, I shut off location sharing. logged out of our shared streaming accounts, disconnected our smart home devices, left all the digital fingerprints she used to track my every move scrubbed clean. She had built a whole routine around assuming I'd never leave, that I'd always pick up the pieces, that I'd always be in reach, no matter how many times she spit on the floor I built for us. But now, she couldn't find me. And that silence? It hit her like a freight train, because she started calling. First once, then 5 times, then 17 missed calls before midnight. I watched them pop up on my backup phone like alerts from a game I'd stopped playing. Then came the messages. Where are you? Can we please talk? Please. I'll tell you everything. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Are you safe? I didn't mean to hurt you. Please come back. I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything. That last one sat in my notifications for a long time. I could feel her unraveling. The power she thought she had was slipping through her fingers like sand, and she finally realized the one thing she never planned for. Me walking away without needing to watch her fall. I didn't respond, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. This was about freedom, about silence, about peace, about choosing to stop being the man she only noticed when he wasn't there to clean up her lies. By the second night, she sent a video message. Tear-streaked face, shaky voice. One of those quiet, pathetic confessions made only after everything else has failed. I didn't know how to stop. It was never about you. It was about me. I just wanted to feel wanted. I swear I didn't think you'd ever actually leave. I thought you loved me enough to stay, no matter what. I didn't mean to destroy everything. Please, please tell me where you are. I watched it once, then deleted it, because I finally understood. She didn't love me. She loved control. And now, she had neither. She didn't come looking for me that week. She didn't send flowers or show up at my apartment begging for forgiveness. I expected the grand gestures, the emotional flooding of apologies. I thought she might show up at my door with tears in her eyes, pretending that she couldn't live without me, that she had been confused or lost. But none of that happened. She stayed silent for the first time in our marriage. The phone calls slowed. The messages stopped. The dramatic Instagram stories vanished. It was as if the woman I had been with for years simply disappeared. And that was the worst part, because I realized she wasn't scared. Not really. She wasn't broken. She was just calculating. She didn't reach out because she was figuring out how to spin it, how to make herself look like the innocent party in this story, how to make sure everyone else thought I was the crazy one, the one who couldn't handle things, the one who was overreacting. She knew her reputation. She knew how to manipulate people into feeling sympathy for her. She wasn't worried about losing me. She was worried about losing control. It wasn't until the following Monday, when I logged into the joint email account we'd used for our shared bills and documents, that I realized just how far she'd go to cover her tracks. I saw a new email from her work, marked urgent. Subject: the meeting tomorrow, important. I opened it. There it was. A proposal. Her company had been asked to represent a new campaign, one she'd been working on in the shadows. And guess what? She'd arranged for an emergency meeting with a potential investor that very week. The details were clear. She was flying out, alone, to meet a man. The same man from the hotel. The same man from the screenshots I found. The name, Jackson, came up more than once in the email thread, along with notes about their private negotiations. I stared at the screen, not even blinking. She had been meeting with him all along. Lying to me, lying to herself, lying to everyone. And I hadn't known it. I had spent months in the dark, trusting a person who had already checked out long ago. This wasn't just a small affair like she'd convinced herself. This wasn't just emotional. She was working with him. And as I read the last part of the email, a message about finalizing their partnership in 2 days, I realized something bigger. She wasn't planning on returning. Not the way I thought she would. She had already mentally checked out of our marriage and into her new life. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an escape. She was using her job, her contacts, and now this shady affair to exit gracefully, without ever having to face the consequences of what she had done. But the joke was on her. She thought I'd never find out. She thought I was too weak, too passive, too forgiving to ever really see her for who she was. But that day I saw her. I saw the truth behind the nice clothes, the glossy job title, the pretty words. I didn't just see the woman I'd married. I saw the woman who would sell me out in a heartbeat if it meant her own safety. And I was done. I logged out of the email account and set the phone down, barely breathing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. I was relieved. Relieved that the final thread of her facade had unraveled. I spent the next few hours planning. I wasn't going to tell her. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could fix it with a quick apology or some meaningless speech. No, this was the part where she would finally realize the one thing she had underestimated. I didn't need her. The next day, I packed a bag. Not a huge one. Just a few clothes, my passport, and my wallet. I put my phone on silent. I didn't want to be reached. By the time she came home that night, expecting me to be there with questions, maybe even an apology of my own, I was already long gone. And I wasn't coming back. She wouldn't see me again. Not until she had to face the damage she'd caused. And by then, I would be living a life she couldn't touch. The last time I heard from her, it was a voicemail. "Where are you? I can't believe you're doing this. I'm so sorry. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. You know we can." I deleted it before the message finished. It was too late for that. When I walked out the door that night, I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't check my phone. Didn't try to see if she'd sent a message or left a voicemail. I didn't even care. At first, I thought maybe I would miss the sound of her laugh, or the way she used to make those little jokes that only she found funny. Maybe I'd miss the way she kissed me goodbye, even when it felt routine. But I didn't. What I missed, oddly enough, was the version of me I had left behind. The man who was content to accept whatever scraps she threw his way. The guy who was too afraid to walk away, who thought that staying in a broken relationship would somehow fix things. That's what I missed. That guy was the one who would have stayed in the dark forever, waiting for a glimpse of affection, hoping things would get better. But he was gone, and I was finally free. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about tearing her down or proving a point. It was about me. About getting back to the version of myself I had forgotten for so long. The one who could stand tall, speak his mind, and walk away from a situation that wasn't right. I spent a month away, living in the apartment I'd rented. Not a luxury penthouse, just a small, cozy place. The kind of place where I could sit at the window, watch the rain fall, and just breathe. It wasn't grand or extravagant, but it was mine. And in that quiet space, I started to rediscover who I was without her. It wasn't easy at first. There were nights when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choice. But then I'd remind myself, I chose peace over pain. I chose clarity over confusion. I chose myself. I started picking up the pieces of my old life, reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with, doing the things I loved before her demands became my world. I spent weekends hiking in the mountains, not because I had to escape, but because I genuinely enjoyed the fresh air, the solitude. I remembered how it felt to laugh with friends without constantly feeling like I had to apologize for my existence. I rediscovered passions I'd buried in the mess of our relationship. Then came the text from her. It had been over a month since we last spoke, and her message was short, simple. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I've made some changes. Can we meet?" For a moment, I felt a familiar pang. The old part of me that wanted to fix things, that wanted to believe people could change, tried to stir. But then I remembered the lessons I had learned over the last few weeks. I was a different person now. The man who would have jumped at that opportunity to talk was gone. And so, I did something I never thought I would. I replied, "I've moved on. I hope you do too. Take care." And just like that, I cut the last tie. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I didn't need to drag the past through another painful conversation. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me reclaiming my life. From that moment on, things started to feel lighter. The weight that had been on my chest for so long lifted. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't bitter. I didn't feel the need for closure because I had created my own. Over the months that followed, I focused on the people who truly mattered. I found comfort in relationships that were real, in friends who cared for me, in moments that weren't tainted by lies. And most importantly, I started loving myself again. I realized I was worth more than the crumbs I had been fed. I was worthy of real love, the kind that didn't need to be earned through compromise and emotional sacrifice. By the time I moved into a new house, one that felt more like home than anything I'd shared with her, I felt whole, strong, free. In the end, I didn't just walk away from her. I walked away from the version of myself that was too afraid to live the life I deserved. And it felt good, really good.